The soul of a man can find refuge in nature and imagination. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our British literature series where we are going to talk about the Romantic period, which has the key features and themes of individualism, nature and imagination, which is completely opposite to our neoclassical period. So, in our previous British literature series episode, we have stopped with the neoclassical age, which was the completely overpowered age of reason and intellect that was completely opposite to emotion. So, in our today's video, we are going to talk how Romantic age started, how it ended, what's the key features, what are the themes that we can see in Romantic writers' work, some of the major writers and major works, so that you'll know how it started and how it ended and what's between what is there in the Romantic age. So without much delay, let's start our video on British literature series where we're going to talk about the Romantic period. Now, let's have a quick introduction to Romantic age. So, the historical setting of Romantic age was from 1789 to 1837. So, the Romantic age started from 1789 and it ended in 1837. The Romantic age was clearly emerged in the late 18th century as a strong reaction to the strict rationalism that was there so much overpowered in the neoclassical period. The French Revolution, which happened in 1789, marked the significant emergence of the Romantic period, and it also helped, and the growing Industrial Revolution also helped to shift from the reason that was there in the neoclassical age to emotion that was there in the Romantic period. So Romantic period has the themes of individualism, nature, imagination and that rural rustic life that we can see these themes and feature in every work of the Romantic age writers. So Romanticism emphasized individual expression and creativity, rejecting the rigid rules of classical literature. So now let's learn about some of the key features of the Romanticism. First, it emphasized on nature. Nature was not just a setting but a spiritual force in the Romantic period. So Romantics saw it as a place of inspiration, peace and divine presence. Next, the emotion was overpowered the reason of the neoclassical age. So, Romantic literature is deeply emotional and personal. Poets and writers they focused on the feelings, imagination, and the power of dreams rather than the cold logic. Third, it has interest in the past. So Romantics, they admired the medieval period and the folklore, considering them to be the more genuine than the industrial society. Fourth, it has some of the supernatural and gothic elements. So ghosts, mysterious landscapes and supernatural forces, they frequently appear in Romantic works, adding some mystery and allure and terror to the works. Next, and the important thing, it supports the individualism and revolution. So Romantics supported personal freedom, rebellion, and the rights of the individual. Many Romantic poets they challenge the social norms and political oppression of that was prevalent in neoclassical age. So these are some of the key features of the Romanticism or the Romantic period that we'll definitely find in every work of the Romantic age. Now, after the key features, let's talk about some of the major Romantic poets and writers. So, Romantic age was divided into two generations. First, we are going to talk about the first generation Romantic poets. And in the first generation of Romantic poets, first we are going to talk about William Wordsworth, who lived from 1770 and he died in 1850. William Wordsworth was also known and called as the father of English Romanticism. Wordsworth focused on ordinary people and rural life. So, majorly he focused on the nature and everyday life. There are so many famous works of his of William Wordsworth, but here I'm talking about some of them. So first is Lyrical Ballads, which was published in 1798, and some people say, or some historians they say that Romantic is started with the publication of the Lyrical Ballads, while some of them say that Romantic period started with the Industrial Revolution or the French Revolution that happened in 1789. So now we're going to talk about the Lyrical Ballads a little bit. So Lyrical Ballads was a joint collection with Coleridge, who was also known as the first generation Romantic poet. So it was a joint collection with Coleridge that marked the beginning of the Romantic poetry. Next, there is Tintern Abbey. So, Tintern Abbey is a reflective poem about nature's influence on human emotion. And there is also Prelude, which was an autobiographical poem about the power of imagination. So, these are some of the most famous work of William Wordsworth. That's important. But he has composed so many works that are nowadays so many questions were asked from minor works to major works. So knowing about all these works are important, but these are some of the most famous works. Okay, now let's talk about another first generation Romantic poet, that was Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who lived from 1772 to 1837. So he was the master of the supernatural and Gothic elements. He was known for his mystical themes and supernatural elements, and some of his key works was like Rime of Ancient Mariner, where that was a poem that talked about a sailor that was caused for killing an albatross who was a bard. Now, he has also composed a work, Kubla Khan. So Kubla Khan was a dream-like poem inspired by an opium vision describing about the exotic palace of the Kubla Khan. So in the Kubla Khan we can see the supernatural elements, and the Rime of Ancient Mariner was also one of his most famous poems. Let's talk about some of the second generation Romantic poets. So these second generation Romantic poets, they are more rebellious, political and experimental. Also, they often questions the societal norm, which was completely opposite genre to the first generation Romantic poets. So first is Lord Byron, who lived from 1788 to 1824. So he created a term Byronic hero, who was a brooding, rebellious and charismatic figure. And amongst all his famous works, some of the key works I have picked, that is Childe Harlow's Pilgrimage and Don Juan. So in Childe Harlow's Pilgrimage, that was a semi-autobiographical poem about a melancholic wanderer. And in Don Juan, we can see it was a satirical epic poem that talks about a romantic adventure. Okay, next there is P.B. Shelley, whose full name was Percy Bysshe Shelley, but mostly we know him as a P.B. Shelley. So he lived from 1792 to 1822, and he was a revolutionary voice amongst all the Romantic poets. He was known for his radical political views, revolutionary ideas, and lyrical poetry. So some of the key works of P.B. Shelley were Ode to West Wind, To a Skylark, Prometheus Unbound, and much more. On Ode to West Wind, we can see that he uses the wind as a metaphor for the revolutionary change. And in To a Skylark, which was a poem that celebrates the joy and the beauty of a bird song. Whereas in Prometheus Unbound, that poem talked about a symbolic drama that is all about resistance to oppression. So, amongst all the works of P.B. Shelley, he has written so many works. But among all his works, these works are my personal favorite. So, I picked them up. But please make sure you read all their works, all these writers and poets' work, and also try to remember the actual day and year in which poets or writers were born, and the year of their death, because in chronology also they are asking this, in which year arrange the chronological order of their death here, or arrange the chronological order of their birth here. So you need to remember, along with the work when it was published, you need to remember the writers or the poets death here and the birth here. Okay, next there is John Keats, who was born in 1795 and he died in 1821. So John Keats was the most famous poet of the second generation romantic poets, because his poems are mostly famous for the sensory rich poetry, and it explores the beauty and mortality. So some of the key works of John Keats are Ode to a Nightingale, Ode to a Grecian, Ode on a Grecianon, to Ottoman, Ode to Psyche, Ode to Immortality. So these are some of the most famous works or poems of John Keats. So Ode to a Nightingale examines the contrast between transient human life and eternal beauty, and Ode to Grecianon features the famous line which was often asked in the exam, that is, beauty is truth, truth is beauty. And in To Ottoman, it celebrates of the richness of nature. So his all works we can see was famous for, as I already told you, that it was all his works were famous for sensory rich poetry that will make you feel the poem. So these are some of the second generation romantic poets that you definitely need to know if you're reading Romantic Age. We talked about the first generation and second generation romantic poets. Now it's time we talk about some of the prose and novelists of the romantic age, who are mostly famous. Okay, so Romanticism is mainly known for poetry, but novelists, they also played a crucial role. So the first novelist we are going to talk about was Mary Shelley, who was born in 1797 and died in 1851. So, her most famous work was Frankenstein, which was published in 1818, which was the first scientific novel or science fiction novel, we can say, that explores the creation, isolation, and ambition. Make sure you read the whole novel of Frankenstein, because so many different type of emotions you will come across, so many different types of themes you will came across, and it's definitely important from the exam point of view. Next, there is Sir Walter Scott. So Walter Scott lived from 1771 to 1832, and his most famous work was Ivanhoe, which all about the revived interest in medieval romance and chivalry. So many, he was mostly a historicist, so please make sure you read all about his all works. Okay, next comes Jane Austen, who was the most famous romantic novelist of every generation of the people. Okay, so Jane Austen was born in 1775 and she died in 1817. So though not a romantic writer in the traditional sense, she incorporated some of the romantic ideals into her novels. That's why she was considered under the romantic age writers. Okay, so if you are a literature student, you definitely should know about Jane Austen and her all works. But some of the most famous work she has written: Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Nightmare Abbey, Northanger Abbey, Emma, and some others I couldn't remember now. But yes, some of the key works I'm going to talk here was about Pride and Prejudice, which explores the love, social class, and individual choice. But in Sense and Sensibility, that contrast the emotion that was considered sensibility with rationality, which was considered as sense. So in all her works, we can see that she has tried to incorporate some of the romantic ideals into her novels. Now it's time we should talk a bit about the legacy of the Romantic Age. So Romanticism's influence is still visible in the modern literature, music, and cinema. First, if we talk about the fantasy literature, for example, The Lord of Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, which draws heavily from the romantic ideals. Next, there is environmental poetry and eco-literature, which continue the romantic tradition of referring to nature whenever there is a conflict with the reason. Okay, next, it has the themes of rebellion and individualism that appear in many modern books and movies. So these are some of the romantic ace characteristics which carried the legacy till or in today's genre or in today's age also. So, if I summarize the whole romantic age into some lines, then we'll understand that the romantic age transformed literature by bringing emotion, nature, and imagination to the forefront. Poets like Wordsworth, Keats, Shelley, they created some of the most influential poetry in English literature that was loved by every generation of students. Okay, then Romanticism remains relevant, proving that literature is not just about logic but also about human experience and emotion. As poetry shifted from formal objective themes to deeply personal and emotional works, it connected with the people. Okay, and nature became the major subject, which symbolizes about the freedom and inspiration that people should take. And Romanticism also inspired the latter movements like Transcendentalism, whose main key attributors are Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Dablow. So these are some of the transcendentalists, some of the people who are associated with the Transcendentalism movement that is associated or inspired from the Romanticism. Romanticism taught us that beauty of the world lies not just in facts but in feelings. So I hope you all have enjoyed this exploration of the romantic age, and please don't forget to comment your favorite romantic poet below. Mine was always going to be John Keats and William Wordsworth. And please don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more such videos on our English literature. Till then, be safe and I'll see you all in a next video.